The chamber of the United Terran Council stood silent as the towering figure of Lady Zalira entered. She was tall, statuesque, and draped in shimmering violet robes that marked her as the highest diplomat of the Lunq Empire, one of the most advanced alien civilizations in the known galaxy. Her eyes, bright silver and cold, scanned the room with mild disdain. When she reached the center of the chamber, her voice echoed, clear and sharp, as though it was meant to pierce rather than speak. I expected more, she sneered, her accent alien but precise. These structures, this architecture, it is pitiful, primitive. The Terran delegates exchanged uncomfortable glances. Cameras floated quietly, capturing every word, every twitch of a frown or tightened jaw. The broadcast was live, streaming, not just across Earth, but to allied colonies and neighboring systems. Lady Zalira continued, unfazed by the discomfort she stirred. You call this a council? Where are your great minds, your visionary architects, your leaders who claim equality in the galactic arena? I see, animals dressed in formal wear. A low murmur buzzed through the chamber. Diplomats clenched their fists under tables. Someone whispered, she's crossing a line. But among the crowd, one man stood still. Captain Reese Calder, a veteran of space exploration. Reese was not a diplomat, but his reputation for handling first contact scenarios with tact and grit earned him a seat in this meeting. Unlike the others, he wasn't angered. He was intrigued. Zalira's eyes finally settled on him, sensing his calm. And you, human male, she said, voice curling with mock amusement. Why do you stare so? Do you think me beautiful? Or are you merely stunned by the presence of superiority? The room fell quieter. Some held their breath, expecting Reese to bristle. Instead, he smiled faintly. No, he said simply, voice steady. I'm just trying to figure out how someone so advanced can still be this insecure. The chamber froze. The insult hung in the air like a blade. Lady Zalira's smile faded. Her silver eyes narrowed into slits. Insecure, she echoed, her tone sharp. You insult the Lunq Empire. No, Reese replied calmly. I'm pointing out the obvious. You prayed into a foreign council, insult everyone, and expect respect. That's not confidence. That's desperation masked as pride. Gasps broke out. A few diplomats tried to wave him down, signaling for him to stop, but it was too late. Zalira's face darkened. She stepped forward, her presence looming. You are bold for a primitive, she spat. Perhaps you would like to prove your worth if there is any. I would, Reese answered coolly. Name your proof. Lady Zalira raised a hand, her fingers tipped with elegant, crystalline claws. Then I propose a cultural trial, she declared. An ancient right of the Lunq people, a test of mind and will. You win, I declare your species worthy. You lose, and Earth must acknowledge its place beneath us. Silence hung. Counselors whispered furiously. The risk was immense, but Reese didn't hesitate. Accepted. A fresh wave of murmurs. The council's chair tried to intervene. Captain, you can't. I can, Reese interrupted. And I will. Zalira smirked. Then prepare yourself, human. The trial begins tomorrow at dawn. And when you fail, I'll see your world kneel. She turned sharply and exited the chamber, her cloak billowing like the shadow of a storm. The room erupted. People shouted, scolded, pleaded with Reese. But he stood silent, watching the doorway where she had gone. He whispered to himself, we'll see who kneels. The council chamber remained in uproar long after Lady Zalira had left. But Reese Calder stood unmoved in the center of the storm. Voices rose from every side, advisors, politicians, and military brass, all trying to sway him, to convince him to back down, to apologize, to call off the foolish challenge he had just accepted. But Reese simply stared ahead, his mind calm, his posture steady like a soldier prepared for war. Finally, the council chair, an elderly woman named Madame Reeve, slammed her gavel, calling the room to order. Captain Calder, she said sternly, do you understand what you've done? The cultural trial is not a game, it's a Lunq tradition with consequences. If you lose, Earth will have to submit. The Lunq Empire will treat us as inferiors in every future negotiation. This is bigger than your pride. Reese looked her in the eyes, his voice firm yet respectful. It was never about pride, Madam Chair. It's about respect. And if we let her walk in here, spit on us, and then leave without standing up to her, we've already lost. That silenced the room, though some still shook their heads. Do you even know what the cultural trial involves? One diplomat snapped. It's not just strength, it's wit, knowledge, endurance. They've beaten every species that tried. Reese smiled faintly. Then I'll be the first to beat them back. The council sighed, seeing that his decision was made, and no plea would change his mind. The meeting was adjourned, and Reese left the chamber, not to cheers, but to tense, worried silence. The next morning, before the suns of the orbital colony had fully risen, Reese stood in the courtyard of the Lunq embassy. A large crowd had gathered, humans, aliens, press drones, all buzzing with anticipation. At the center of the marble platform stood Lady Zalira, now adorned in ceremonial armor, sleek and elegant, laced with sharp silver patterns that caught the light. She looked every bit the alien nobility, tall and regal, her chin raised as though already savoring victory. You are brave, human, she said mockingly as Reese approached, dressed simply in his black uniform with no symbols, no armor, nothing to display but himself. Bravery and foolishness often look the same from a distance, he replied with a shrug. Zalira chuckled softly. We shall see. By Lunq law, the cultural trial shall consist of 3 stages: mind, body, and spirit, each designed to break you. Should you fail any one of these, you lose. Is that clear? Clear as day, Reese answered, eyes unwavering. The first stage was the mind trial, and they were led into a vast hall shaped like a labyrinth. Its walls shimmered with holographic puzzles, linguistic traps, and logical mazes. Each wrong turn spawned illusions, echo chambers of confusion designed to disorient the mind. Zalira strode confidently ahead, her people evolved in logic and reason far beyond human standards. She was certain Reese would falter early, but she was wrong. Reese navigated differently, not with raw logic, but with intuition, human unpredictability. He made connections she didn't expect, spotted patterns where none seemed apparent. Every time she thought he was lost, he emerged ahead, even grinning as if enjoying himself. The alien observers whispered among themselves, unsettled. No human should have adapted so quickly to their sophisticated mental traps. Zalira grew annoyed, her pride pricked with every human success. Hours passed, and finally they emerged from the labyrinth side by side. She didn't hide her irritation. Lucky guesswork, she muttered. Reese shrugged, wiping sweat from his brow. Or maybe humans think in ways you've never understood. She scowled but said nothing further. The body trial was next. They were transported to a gravity chamber where the conditions shifted randomly, crushing gravity. Sudden 0G. Searing heat, biting cold. The challenge was to endure, to adapt, to survive without faltering. Zalira's biology was superior, her muscles designed for extremes, her skin resistant to harsh conditions. Reese, on the other hand, was merely human. She expected him to collapse within minutes, yet he persisted. Every time the gravity crushed down, he adjusted his posture, conserving strength. When the cold bit deep, he remembered his time in the polar outposts of Mars when the heat flared. He slowed his breathing, recalling survival training in the Sahara domes. He adapted not because of strength, but because of memory, experience, and stubbornness. Zalira began to notice it, not the strength of his body, but the will in his eyes. Other species might have superior forms, but humans endured through pain, by sheer willpower. Finally, the chamber ended, and both stood once more, battered but unbroken. She eyed him warily now. You're not like the others, she admitted reluctantly. I've never claimed to be, Reese replied with a thin smile. The final trial approached the spirit, a test of inner fears and emotional resolve. They entered a chamber of holographic illusions tailored to break their psyche. Zalira's trial showed her deepest fear, being dethroned, cast out, powerless. She fought her way through, driven by her pride, but it left her shaken. But when it was Reese's turn, the room conjured his darkest memory, the day he lost his team in an alien jungle, ambushed, his orders costing lives, the guilt, the screams they played on repeat. Yet Reese stood firm, eyes wet but unyielding. He whispered to the illusion, I carry them with me, always, that's why I keep going. The room tried harder, but it couldn't break him. His guilt wasn't his weakness, it was his anchor. When the trial ended, both emerged, but Rhys stood taller. The observers murmured in disbelief. A human had passed all 3 trials. Lady Zalira's face was pale with fury and humiliation, but by her own law, she was bound. She stepped forward, eyes flashing, but then she knelt before Rhys. The crowd gasped. The alien diplomat had bowed to a human. Rhys didn't gloat. He simply extended a hand to her. Respect isn't given by blood or empire. It's earned. She looked up at him, and for the first time, her eyes held not contempt but a hint of respect. The human had put her in her place not with cruelty, but with undeniable strength. And in that moment, the galaxy watched and remembered. The doors to the mind trial chamber hissed open with a deep mechanical groan, revealing an enormous labyrinth bathed in soft blue light. The walls shifted with fluid motion, forming new pathways with every few steps. Strange symbols and alien glyphs glowed on the surfaces, some rotating, others pulsing as if alive. The air was cold, almost sterile, and every sound seemed to echo as if the walls themselves were listening. At the entrance stood Lady Zalira, her tall form cloaked in ceremonial armor, her expression calm and proud. She gestured gracefully at the maze ahead. "This is the path of wits," she declared. "A true Cernic mind can navigate this in less than an hour. Fail to find your way, and the walls will reset, trapping you inside endlessly." Rhys Calder stepped forward, eyeing the maze with quiet concentration. He wasn't a scholar, nor a mathematician, but he knew how to observe, how to read patterns under pressure. Still, this was unlike any challenge he had faced before. Zalira crossed her arms, smirking. "You may begin when ready, human. But don't worry, I'll enjoy watching you stumble." With that, Rhys stepped inside. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the entrance sealed behind him with a hiss. The lights shifted, the floor hummed faintly, and the first puzzle presented itself. A floating panel emerged from the floor with a sequence of alien symbols. A voice echoed in his ear, a soft, synthetic Cernic tone, instructing him to arrange the symbols in the correct order based on a language he didn't understand. Rhys crouched, studying the symbols. "Okay, can't read the language, but patterns," he muttered. He noticed some symbols shared similar strokes. Others mirrored each other. His mind, trained on deciphering alien ruins in his exploration days, kicked in. He wasn't reading. He was recognizing visual patterns, frequency, and alignment. Slowly, carefully, he began moving the symbols around. A wrong move made the panel flash red, and the floor shook gently, a warning. Meanwhile, behind the observation wall, Zalira watched, her aides chuckling. "See? The primitives struggle even at the first step." One of them scoffed. Zalira smiled, coldly, but kept watching. She noticed something peculiar. The human was slow, yes, but methodical. He wasn't guessing blindly. He was learning the logic as he progressed. After several tense minutes, Rhys placed the final symbol in place, and the panel glowed green. A door in the wall opened. He chuckled to himself. "One down," he whispered and moved forward. The next section of the labyrinth was a test of perception, holographic walls shifting to create illusions. Paths seemed to open, but led back to the start, or worse, into dead ends that reconfigured endlessly. Rhys paused, breathing deeply. He shut his eyes and listened. There, a faint hum, a frequency barely audible. Every time he faced a false path, the frequency shifted slightly higher. It's sound, he realized. They didn't just make this visual. The right path is marked by sound. He followed his ears instead of his eyes, ignoring the visual distractions. The trick worked. Slowly but surely, he navigated forward. The walls grew more confusing, yet he adapted. Each illusion failed to fool him for long. Zalira's smile began to fade. Her aides grew restless. "This isn't possible," one muttered. "Humans don't have such acute perception." "He's not just seeing," Zalira whispered to herself. Eyes narrowing. "He's feeling." Finally, Rhys reached the third stage of the mind trial, the memory gauntlet. A glowing orb floated in a circular chamber, radiating streams of light that displayed rapid sequences of alien history, codes, faces, and maps, all in flashes, too fast to comprehend. The task: recite the sequence back in exact order. Rhys frowned, standing in the center, the lights dancing around him. "I can't read your language," he muttered, but memory isn't always about words. He watched for colors, movements, rhythms. Instead of trying to understand, he memorized the pattern: a red flash followed by two blue pulses, then a swirling green motion. He memorized the sequence like a song, like muscle memory. When the orb paused and demanded the sequence be recited, Rhys closed his eyes and retraced the sequence, not by meaning, but by motion and color. When he finished, the orb glowed bright white. Success! From the observation chamber. The Cernic officials stared in disbelief. Zalira clenched her fists. "Impossible," she whispered. "He can't even read the script." Yet the maze walls parted, revealing the exit, and Rhys stepped through, sweat on his brow but a grin on his face. Waiting at the end, Zalira met his gaze, her pride bruised, but her voice calm. "I'll admit, you're resourceful for a human, but this was merely the first path. The next trials won't be so kind." Rhys shrugged. Kindness wasn't expected. "But I'll still be standing when it's done." The watching crowd of humans and aliens murmured with excitement and disbelief. A human had passed the Cernic mind trial. An unprecedented feat. Rhys knew the challenge ahead would be harder, but one thing was certain: Zalira wasn't laughing anymore. The next phase of the cultural trial was the body challenge, a grueling gauntlet designed to break the body's endurance, reflexes, and adaptability. Rhys stood on the platform in the arena, a circular metallic chamber where gravity, temperature, and atmospheric pressure would change randomly. Above the arena, balconies filled with alien dignitaries, Cernic observers, and human officials watched with intense interest. But hidden from their view, Lady Zalira had prepared a secret twist. She stood on a private balcony, a small device tucked into her palm, an illegal Cernic override emitter. With a simple touch, she could manipulate the trial conditions without detection. To her, it wasn't cheating, it was maintaining the natural order. No primitive human should pass a Cernic challenge. She would ensure Rhys fell here, where the mind alone couldn't save him. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena. "Let the body trial begin." Without warning, the arena's gravity intensified, tripling Earth's standard pull. Rhys gasped as his knees buckled, his bones aching under the crushing force. He dropped to one knee, his breath shallow. Across from him, Zalira stood easily, her physiology built for extreme environments. She watched him, a faint smirk on her lips, expecting him to collapse entirely. But Rhys gritted his teeth. Slowly, he adjusted his posture, redistributing his weight, keeping low to conserve energy. His training on high-gravity moons came back to him, how to move like a slow, steady machine. Then, the temperature plummeted, frost formed on the floor, and Rhys's breath became visible vapor. His skin burned from the sudden cold, but he refused to fall. "She's controlling this," Rhys thought bitterly. The shifts were too quick, too calculated. He suspected sabotage, but had no proof. Zalira subtly activated her device again, spiking the gravity even higher for times Earth's norm. This time, Rhys collapsed onto both knees, his hands pressing into the freezing floor. She smiled victoriously, convinced the human's limit had been reached. But then, he laughed. A low, rough chuckle escaped Rhys's lips despite the crushing weight. His voice cracked, but carried defiance. "You think this'll stop me, lady? I've hauled equipment twice my weight in 0G, survived blizzards on Europa. You'll have to try harder." The audience leaned forward, murmuring. No human should still be conscious, let alone mocking her, summoning everything. Rhys shifted his position, pressing one foot forward, then another, inch by inch. He rose, not standing fully, but crouching low like a beast bracing for the next blow. His body screamed, every muscle aflame, but his mind was sharper than ever. And then, something strange happened. The floor beneath him started vibrating, just faintly. He recognized it, not just gravity fluctuations, but resonance. There was an artificial rhythm here, too precise for a random trial. She's tampering. With that realization, he smiled inwardly. If she was manipulating the conditions, maybe he could turn that manipulation back on her. Rhys reached into his boot, pulling a tiny multitool compact, hacking spike disguised as a simple knife. He had carried it not as a weapon, but as a safeguard. He plunged the spike into the floor's data node, subtly concealed. With a few commands, he rerouted the environmental control, feeding back unstable data loops. Suddenly, the chamber flipped zero. Gravity activated, and Zalira, who had been balanced so gracefully, floated upward unexpectedly. "What?" she gasped, flailing slightly as she lost her footing. Reese, prepared for the shift, stabilized himself by gripping the embedded spike, anchoring his body. Then the temperature surged to scorching heat, the air thick and humid, but still fluctuating, unpredictably because Reese's override had made the system unstable. Zalira's eyes flared in anger. She tried pressing her secret device again, but it only caused a glitch. Now the arena's systems weren't obeying her fully. She was losing control. From the viewing balconies, the spectators noticed her sudden struggle. Whispers arose. Why? Is she struggling now? Did the human do something? Reese pulled himself along the walls, using handholds to navigate the chaos, his endurance winning over sheer strength. His muscles screamed, but he kept moving. Finally, a loud clang echoed. The chamber reset, the system forced to stabilize by emergency protocols. The trial ended. Both participants landed hard on the floor as gravity returned to normal. Zalira was panting, her elegant posture broken, her armor scuffed from awkward impacts. Reese knelt, equally exhausted, but smiling faintly. The adjudicator approached, announcing loudly, "Trial complete." Both participants endured, however. Unexpected system fluctuations were detected. An investigation will follow. Reese stood, brushing dust from his clothes. He looked at Zalira, his voice low but piercing. "Funny, Lady Zalira, the arena fought me like it had a personal grudge. But somehow, it turned against you too. Sabotage, perhaps?" Zalira's glare was sharp, but her pride prevented a direct answer. "You're clever, human. But spirit cannot be cheated. The next trial will show your true limit," she hissed. Reese only smiled. "We'll see about that. But remember, every trap you set can be walked through if you know the way." She left the arena, her mind rattled. This was no ordinary human. This was a man she could no longer predict, and that frightened her more than she would ever admit. The final trial, the Spirit Challenge, was unlike anything Reese had faced before. No shifting walls, no physical torture, no riddles to solve. Instead, it was a test deep inside his mind and heart. The chamber where the trial took place was dark, silent, and eerily empty. A single beam of soft light shone down on the platform where Reese stood alone. Lady Zalira watched from behind a translucent barrier, her expression unreadable but tense. The spirit trial was sacred to the Cernicate, was meant to expose a contestant's deepest fears and weaknesses. No one who failed here would ever return the same. Reese felt a cold whisper brushing his thoughts. As the chamber's advanced holographic system activated, images and sensations began flooding his mind, vivid and overwhelming. First came the loss. He saw his team, his friends, caught in an ambush in a distant jungle on a hostile planet. Their screams echoed painfully in his ears. He relived the moment he gave the order that sent them into a trap, the crushing guilt settling heavy in his chest. Painful memories clawed at his soul, but Reese didn't falter. He forced himself to face the past, not run from it. The holograms shifted. Now, he was surrounded by darkness, an endless void where shadows whispered doubts and fears. "You failed them. You are weak. You are nothing." The voices echoed inside his mind, trying to break his spirit. But Reese gritted his teeth and whispered to himself, "I carry them with me. Their memory makes me stronger, not weaker." The chamber responded, walls flickering, light dimming and brightening as if trying to shake his resolve. Then, it showed him a vision of Earth, the people he cared about, and the hope that humanity represented, not perfect, but resilient. Meanwhile, Lady Zalira's eyes narrowed. She had always believed strength was measured by power, by domination. But here, she saw something different, something she had overlooked in humans. Their ability to carry pain, grief, and still move forward with unbroken will. The chamber then shifted to her own trial: pride, fear of failure, and loss of status. For a moment, Zalira herself felt vulnerable, remembering how losing this trial would mean humiliation, exile, or worse. But she hid it well. Back inside the chamber, Rhys faced the final test. A voice whispered softly in an alien tongue he could barely understand, telling him to give up, to kneel, to admit defeat. Instead, Rhys spoke clearly. I may be flawed, I may be scarred, but I will never surrender. The chamber glowed bright white. The trial was over. The barrier lifted. Rhys stepped out, breath steady, eyes fierce but calm. Lady Zalira approached him slowly, her regal composure shaken. You have passed the spirit trial, she said quietly. I did not expect it. Rhys nodded. Neither did I, but sometimes it's not about being the strongest or the smartest, it's about refusing to break. The council chamber burst into applause. Humans and aliens alike whispered among themselves about this unprecedented victory. Zalira knelt before Rhys, a gesture that stunned everyone. By Cernic law, I admit defeat, she said with a humility rare for her kind. Rhys helped her rise. You taught me something today. That pride can be strength, but humility is power. The two stared at each other not as enemies, but as equals who had been tested by fire, and the galaxy watched in silence, knowing this moment would change everything. The air in the grand hall was thick with tension. Word of the cultural trial's outcome had spread fast, sending ripples across the United Terran Council and the Cernic Empire alike. No one could believe that a human considered primitive by most had not only survived but conquered all three trials. Lady Zalira, once proud and untouchable, now faced the consequences of her loss. The chamber was filled with dignitaries from many star systems. Cameras hovered, capturing every moment for the galaxy to witness. Lady Zalira stood at the center, surrounded by her aides, her face a mask of controlled fury and humiliation. Captain Rhys Calder entered calmly, his expression steady. He knew what was expected, a show of respect, a final act to confirm the terms of the challenge. But this was not a celebration, it was a turning point. A solemn voice announced, according to the ancient laws of the Cernic Empire, defiant, the cultural trial requires the losing party to submit in acknowledgement of their inferiority. In this matter, Zalira's eyes locked on Rhys, pride warred with honor inside her. But the law was clear. Slowly, she bent her knees and lowered herself, kneeling before the human. Gasps echoed through the hall. Some humans cheered quietly, others held their breath. Alien diplomats whispered fiercely, some in shock, others in indignation. Rhys stepped forward, offering his hand. Lady Zalira, I do not seek to humiliate. I seek respect earned, not demanded. She grasped his hand, pulling herself to her feet, eyes still burning with a mix of defiance and grudging admiration. Today, Rhys continued, the galaxy has seen that humanity is more than you believed. We are resilient, clever, and strong, not just in body, but in spirit. The council hall erupted with applause. Even some Cernic officials, though reluctant, nodded in recognition. The power balance had shifted, if only slightly. Zalira composed herself and addressed the assembly. While I accept my defeat, I do not accept the judgment of humanity's worth by a single contest. This is only the beginning of a new chapter. Rhys smiled gently. Then let that new chapter be one of mutual respect. No more arrogance, no more underestimation. The tension in the room softened as the two faced each other, symbols of their people's past divisions and future possibilities. Behind the scenes, whispers spread quickly. The once invincible Lady Zalira had been brought down not by force, but by human will and heart. The fall of her supremacy marked the dawn of a new era, one where humans would no longer be dismissed or looked down upon in the galactic stage. And Rhys Calder, the unassuming human captain, became the emblem of humanity's unyielding spirit. After the formalities ended, the grand hall emptied, leaving behind the echo of whispers and shifting footsteps. Captain Rhys Calder and Lady Zalira found themselves alone in a quiet corridor, away from the eyes of the council and the distant hum of surveillance drones. Zalira's usual regal composure softened as she regarded Rhys with a mixture of grudging respect and curiosity. You surprised me, she admitted quietly, not just with your strength or wit, but with something I never expected, your will to keep going even when everything was against you. Reese smiled, a tired but genuine expression. It's what humans do. We carry our failures, our scars, but we don't let them define us. We use them to grow. She nodded slowly, her silver eyes reflecting something more vulnerable than pride or anger. For years, I believed Cernic's supremacy was absolute, that our minds, bodies, and spirits were beyond comparison. You have shown me that we were blind to the power of resilience. Reese took a step closer. Respect is earned through understanding, not domination. I hope this trial will mark the beginning of a new path between our people. Celira's lips curved into a rare, genuine smile. Perhaps there's much I can learn from humanity after all. As they walked side by side toward the exit, an unspoken bond formed a fragile bridge between two very different worlds. In the days that followed, Lady Celira's public demeanor shifted. Her sharp words toward humans softened, replaced with cautious diplomacy. Behind closed doors, she advocated for cooperation and alliance rather than conquest. Reese, too, found himself no longer just a soldier or diplomat, but a symbol of human potential and pride. The cultural trial had been more than a contest, it was a lesson that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in power or superiority, but in humility, endurance, and respect. And in the vast reaches of the galaxy, where countless species sought dominance, humanity stood tall not because it was the strongest, but because it never gave up.